I'm confused.
And what's new?
If I get vaccinated, do I have to wear a mask?
Yes. Uncle Daddy said so.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Glad to have you guys here on our Sunday special. Pastor Toby Chalk Knox. I'm the Water Boy. It's good to be with you guys.
Hey, we got Dr. J. Bhattacharya.
Yes, we do.
You guys do not want to miss that interview with Dr. J. He was very helpful.
Yes.
On all the Delta variant vaccinations, coronavirus, the spread.
It's like a master class with Dr. J on all things COVID, vaccines, masks.
Yeah.
I did my usual. I asked him a couple dumb questions that really
I didn't think your questions were dumb, man.
They need to be asked.
There's no dumb questions. There's only dumb people who ask questions. Talking about.
So feel better about it.
So I am dumb. The questions weren't dumb though.
No.
No. You see how I followed that?
So become a member today. So you can
help Gabe not be dumb. Okay. That's
also,
good.
you get $100 off at the Politics of Sex conference coming up in Nashville.
Hey, we got a drum roll.
Oh,
Where's our drum roll?
I'm coming with it.
Another one of our SWAT talks.
Hustle up.
You ready?
Hustle up.
No, it's not. It's not
we got Sheologians coming. We got Nancy Wilson coming.
I got it. Who else did we announce? Sheologians.
Darren Doan.
We did, yeah.
Uncle Gary.
Uncle
Jason
Gary.
Farley.
Knox.
Gary. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And announcing today, Jeff Schaefer and Ben Merkel, Contemporary Sex Law and the Abolition of Man.
Wow.
Silver, hallelujah. Gold, hallelujah.
So
good.
Jeff
hallelujah.
Schaefer, when he gave me that topic, that was his title for them. I was...
So Ben Merkel's
Bomb.
president of New St. Andrews College.
Yep.
Jeff Schaefer is a former ADF lawyer,
Yep. That's
Alliance
right.
for Defending Freedom. And he is actually about to come on at New St. Andrews College at their Law and Policy Institute.
That's right. That's right, man.
So
Way to go, Toby.
NSA wants to not only train you to have a full-orbed liberal arts worldview,
That's right.
but train you to engage politically at their Law and Policy Institute. So come meet Jeff Schaefer and Ben Merkel, Contemporary Sex Law and the Abolition of Man.
I can't. Jeff Schaefer, he's smart.
He's a ninja.
He real smart.
No. Better than that. He's a Jedi.
He's not dumb.
Jedi master. The dude is amazing.
Hey, in our beautiful hometown of Moscow, Idaho, Erber Automotive is looking for Christians to join forces and wage war together on broken cars. That's hilarious. Since Adam's fall, cars have been suffering at the hand of the second law of thermodynamics. That's true. Starting with that very first Eden Model 1. That
It's kind of like genetic entropy.
puttered out of the garden.
Car entropy.
Paul said that all creation groans. And he never even heard a poor car owner on the side of the road with a steaming engine. At Erber Auto, you'll work to make auto repair fun for customers with, I don't know how bouncy castles work. Anyways, motorcycle cruises and honest service. That part I understand. Most importantly, you'll work alongside Christians to show entropy, the Uno reverse card.
I love that.
Erber Auto is looking for a shop manager and a service writer and is always looking for resumes from qualified and experienced technicians who are ready to do battle with the forces of evil.
They're hiring.
Or at least metal fatigue.
Yeah.
They have 2 positions to fill at competitive salaries. Send your resume to business@erberauto.com. ERBER auto.
They're going to get it.
.com.
Tell people the truth. You can't handle the truth.
They had 4 on there when we started reading this earlier. They now just down to 2.
They've already
is that right?
They're down to 2.
Oh, wow.
Our ads are working. It's like Biden.
reverse.
It's like Biden on the economy. It's like we're the best economy ever. Yeah. So I am really confused about the messaging that's coming out of the White House about.
It's not just you.
Is it not just me?
it's not just you.
Just listen more carefully, Gabe.
The CDC is saying they have concluded that fully vaccinated people are at a very, very low risk of getting COVID-19. Therefore, if you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
Oh,
there you go.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
so that was May.
That was
May.
back in May, May
And
17th.
then he gave a press conference on Thursday.
Today I want to talk to you about COVID-19.
Oh.
Maybe the best way to start is, in a significant part of the country, you wouldn't have to take one of these off. You don't have to put one on.
Oh.
Like in my home state of Delaware, where I live in Newcastle County, where I was yesterday in Pennsylvania, because people got vaccinated.
Oh.
They got vaccinated.
So they don't have to wear a
Need
mask.
the mask when the vast majority of people got vaccinated.
There you go.
Mr. President, you said if you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. And it seems I haven't said
If you're fully vaccinated in an area where we do not have, so let me clarify.
in May, you made it sound like a vaccine was the ticket to losing the mask forever. And
That is true at the time, because I thought there were people who were going to understand that getting vaccinated made a gigantic difference. And what happened was, the new variant came along, they didn't get vaccinated, it was spread more rapidly, and more people were getting sick. That's the
My dog-faced pony soldier.
They still doesn't answer the question.
No.
But that was also in the same.
That was in like 36 minutes of the conference. So at the beginning of the conference, he starts off with people who wear masks. If they had this vaccine, they wouldn't have to be putting these on or off. Right. By the way, isn't he vaccinated?
That's what I thought.
But didn't he just pull it on and off?
That's what I thought.
I'm not that stupid. Now listen.
No.
Now listen. There's a lot of people who don't like me. That I'm pretty.
Everything
I get it.
is fine. Everything is fine.
That Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
It's not though. I mean, he's in that moment himself is not. I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is forget my political positions. This is an absolute PR nightmare.
Yeah. That's
if
right.
I want to convince someone not to wear a mask, I don't do it by saying, hey, once you get vaccinated, you won't have to wear this mask and then walk around everywhere with the mask on.
Knox, science is a process. You're thinking of it as being fixed.
like a white person, maybe?
Yes. Yes, I am thinking of it as being, gravity fixed.
No, it's not that simple.
Oh.
Yeah, you're sorry.
Well, when we got clowns in charge of the whole circus here.
Did you say anything else useful?
What scares me is where this is going.
Okay.
So today, I'm calling on all states and local governments to use funding they have received, including from the American Rescue Plan, to give $100 to anyone who gets fully vaccinated.
Oh.
I know the paying people to get vaccinated might sound unfair to folks who've gotten vaccinated already. But here's the deal.
That's funny.
If incentives help us beat this virus, I believe we should use them. We all benefit if we can get more people vaccinated.
Yep.
So wait, hold on.
Right.
Hey, so American Rescue Plan, that was bailout money, right? Like that was like
Stimulus money.
Stimulus money.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, stimulus money because the government shut down everybody, right? That was stimulus money. The government. Right. How does that get the approval to get reallocated to people who want to go get a vaccine? How does what legislation?
Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
You know what? They keep telling me that. I'm gonna start keep my rifle by my side.
This is the theme of the show. Everything's
everything's
fine.
okay.
Everything's fine.
Everything's
Look
fine.
into my eyes.
But I'm honestly like, how do you get that?
Just take the money. Just take them. What do you call it when I mean, it's almost like I don't know. Like he's dangerously close to. I mean, this is bribe money.
Yeah,
it's like him telling you like
quid pro quo.
I don't know. Like quid pro quo. I mean, is he like an American pimp?
Well, you said the government, so pretty much.
I mean, like here's your money.
There was a time where the government had people were the thing that the government served. Now it seems like we serve the government, and so that's not how it's supposed to operate.
You know what that means, though, Knox? You know whose fault this is?
I hate what you're going to
ours.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, next clip. Before he start preaching on it.
Everything is
federal
fine.
Government employee will be asked to attest to their vaccination status.
Oh.
Anyone who does not attest or is not vaccinated will be required to mask no matter where they work, test 1 or 2 times a week to see if they've acquired COVID.
Wow.
Socially distance.
Because that's scientific.
And generally will not be allowed to travel for work.
Oh.
Likewise, today, I'm directing my administration to take steps to apply similar standards to all federal contractors.
Ooh.
If you want to do business with the federal government, get your workers vaccinated.
Yep.
This is horrible. What is this stuff?
In the words of Rod Martin.
Here's the thing. We get a lot of people emailing us asking us about the vaccine. My employer's enforcing it, and now we've had some military people start talking to us about this because the federal government is going to looks like they're going to require the military to get vaccinated.
Yeah,
and it's not a sin. to get vaccinated.
Right.
But at the same time, there's certain, I think, muscles you need to be working or using when you go to make these decisions.
That's right.
You don't want to just get vaccinated because they're forcing you to do it, or you got to think through.
Can I ask another question? Because I agree with you. It's not a sin if you decide you choose that you want to make this decision.
You think this is best for you.
And Dr. J later in the interview was very helpful about that. He was very helpful about
the question
vaccine.
that I have though: is it a sin for them to be able to force you to do it?
Oh yes.
See, that's the real question.
Right.
So I'm not questioning a friend of mine who decides to get vaccinated. Well, we might disagree on that.
Right.
Listen, I've already been through the process. My immune system, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Right. I can handle the variant. I'm
probably stronger.
I'm probably strong. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but the question is not whether or not you choose to have it. No, go do what you want to do. Make wise decisions with your family. Love your family the best way you can. My mom.
But it's not love. I'm sorry. You were
and I'm just saying, my mom, she's at risk.
I always stop when you start talking about
Mama Shannon.
Mrs. Mama Shannon.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
You know, she got vaccinated, and I understand why she did it. I disagree with her, but that's my mama. I love her. And if this is going to benefit, they better not do nothing crazy to my mama. They're going to have a war on their head. But you know what I'm saying? But is it wrong for the government to require people who work for them and the entities that they're over to be vaccinated?
Right.
Yes. That's wrong.
Yeah. So right now with DeSantis, we're going to go there. With DeSantis, he's telling companies that they can't require their employees to be vaccinated. You know, he's pushing the other way, and so is he wrong for doing that? And I was like, yes, because private entities should be able to control
and make
their own companies, right? The government, is it in the same situation?
I want to say no, because the government is a public entity. It's not a private entity.
Right.
Meaning, again, back to the point, we are that guy's boss.
Okay. Bars.
We are that guy's boss.
Right.
And
bars.
And we have a bunch of employees.
Yeah, right.
Running around like a bunch of clown show. You know, that think they think they're our bosses.
Right.
The CDC is not our boss.
Right.
Right.
The federal government is not our boss. But I agree with you. I think the government as a public entity does not have the right to tell a private entity, like a private business, how to run their private business.
Yeah.
If a private business wants to require something, they can. They should have the freedom to do that, even if it's stupid.
Right.
And if it's harmful, then you can appeal that potentially, or quit and leave and go do something else.
Right.
Yeah, but here's who I want to speak to is the military veteran who's in the military right now.
Kick.
And he's going to have to
You got to
because
kick.
even if, let's say, obviously you're in contact with your pastor, you're getting help from your elders and counsel and all that stuff. But even if you decide to get the vaccine, being in the military, you do it in such a way that you're exercising those kicking muscles.
Yeah.
Because if you don't kick there, you aren't going to kick down the road here. You aren't going to kick.
You're preaching.
And then we're
Exactly.
and then we're
preaching,
singing
Gabe.
psalms in the middle of a parking lot and we're getting arrested for it. Like
Right, because you're a dangerous.
something led to that moment,
That's
right?
right.
Something
They are only doing what we are allowing them to do.
That's right.
That's right.
We are standing for this. If we stand this, if we let it go, if we let it stand, they will keep doing it. And frequently, what they do is, of course, you'll have some crazy, at a press conference, suggest something insane.
Yeah.
And the Biden administration will be like, well, we're not sure about that.
Yeah.
Right.
But as soon as they realize that no one's freaking out and lighting their hair on fire and
they
saying,
tested that.
yeah, it's beta testing. Is all they're doing. And then 6 weeks later, 6 months later, they're like, we decided that the best science shows that you have to do this now.
You have to wear a mask and be vaccinated.
And what they know is, based on the early
indications,
beta testing, they know they'll go for it.
So they would
because you didn't kick.
So we showed everybody that we're willing to roll over
Yeah.
for this next round.
So stop now.
Yeah.
Tell them no.
Throw a fit. Tweet it out.
Yeah, I mean,
get on Facebook. Let everybody push back on every forum and channel you have. Push back.
Keep the fruit of the spirit.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
remember, it's not loving your neighbor to let your neighbor sin.
Mm-hmm.
And your neighbors who are doing coercive things are sinning.
Maybe it might be a good time for churches who are deciding this time that they're not going to because they saw last time it wasn't right to do and they repented. Say, hey, you know what? We're going to talk to our city council.
Yep.
We're going to talk to our sheriff, and we're going to let them know
we ain't doing it.
We ain't doing it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We ain't doing it.
And you are in sin to require this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
You are under the Lord Jesus Christ. That's where you got your authority from. It's sinful.
And so the reason why why we're talking this way is because it's happening again.
Right.
Here's the states right now where they're requiring masks right now.
So we have mask requirements back in Washington, California, New York.
That's right. And what's funny about this map is you have the states where mask mandates have now been banned, including Texas, where Governor Abbott the governor required it.
Yeah.
In Texas. And then he went and signed an executive order this last week saying, I'm going to sign an executive order banning businesses from requiring masks.
So he's doing the same.
He's doing the same thing he did.
Welcome to conservatives.
Yeah.
Doing stuff that's stupid.
He said, you can't require your employees to wear masks.
Right.
Yeah. See, but
because you're confusing again governments. You're not over a private business.
And last year, Governor Abbott required businesses to require employees to wear masks.
Right.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna keep going here. Now,
I'm gonna break
here's
something.
Joe Biden referenced this. I think we missed the video or something, but Joe Biden referenced this
in
his press conference. He said basically the hot spots he defined as 50 cases for every 100,000 people,
according to the CDC.
According to the CDC, he was quoting.
I'm pretty sure a kindergartner just drew this one.
But it's like, you said, but if you're standard, so all the places in red are where the breakout is supposedly, or the new Delta variant. And,
I like the color red too.
Yeah. And so he defined it as for every 50 cases for per 100,000. Yeah. And it's kind of like, man, if you set your standards so low, no wonder the whole U.S. map is red.
Well, hold on. But forget, what is the standard? Because if it was something that was actually extremely dangerous or, like, oh, wow, this is, then I can understand having a low infection rate, but I'm wondering.
I mean, look at Nevada. Look at all the no population in Nevada and all the hot spots in Nevada.
That's because there are only 10 people there.
Exactly.
Have you been noticing, like on MSNBC and other news channels, they are not talking about the deaths of the virus. You don't see any calculation anymore of people who are dying every day.
Deaths have plummeted,
right,
lower than it's been in
They're
months.
only counting now. I saw this on a few of them. They're only, especially on the liberal left ones. They're only counting now those people who have been vaccinated.
Right.
They're only so this many millions of people have been vaccinated. Right. This more to go.
Hospitalizations plummeting. This is the thing, people, Christians, you've got to ask the questions. It's actually interesting. There was this MIT study that came out last January that I saw is just getting shared around again. I'm sure it got shared before. MIT researchers, quote, infiltrated a COVID skeptics community. Probably ours.
Like on Facebook or something?
I don't know.
Yeah, a COVID skeptic community. That's great.
And here's some quotes from their report. This is MIT. Most fundamentally, the groups that we studied believe that science is a process, not an institution. Like a priesthood. It's not a priesthood.
Yeah, it's not the CDC. Science is not the CDC.
Indeed.
That's great. That's
true.
Quote.
Indeed, anti-maskers often reveal themselves to be more sophisticated in their understanding of how scientific knowledge is socially constructed than their ideological adversaries, who espouse naive realism about the objective truth of public health data. That's true.
Okay.
In other words,
naive realism?
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, anti-maskers value unmediated access to information and privilege personal research and direct reading over expert interpretations.
I'm starting to get insulted a little bit here.
No, I'm actually being. I feel like I'm being affirmed.
Well,
that's exactly right.
I mean,
it's members.
Well,
it's objective.
They found me.
But that's supposed to be an insult. That's what I mean. Like,
right. Yeah.
But has something changed in the world and nobody told me?
Its members value individual initiative and ingenuity, trusting scientific analysis only insofar as they can replicate it themselves by accessing and manipulating the data firsthand.
You mean like gravity?
Hilarious.
Yeah, right.
So you remember the Smithsonian?
I told you
why can't I do that?
What is it?
My fault.
We can have him say it again.
I don't know. Smithsonian.
Are you done?
What is my problem?
No, go ahead.
You remember, this was sometime last year, 2020.
Yeah.
They came out with this infographic on white culture.
Right.
Like, this is the how white culture functions, how white culture thinks, how they live, and how they work.
Emphasis on scientific method, objective, rational, linear thinking, cause and effect relationships, quantitative emphasis. No,
that's hilarious. That's how white culture thinks.
So this is. I remember
so
this.
The reason we're against masking and COVID mandates is because
white culture.
We're white.
I don't know how. Whoever did this, I want to flog, because this is probably some of the most racist things you could be saying.
I mean, there's the rest of this we cut off, but like Christian values is on this.
Yeah.
Judeo-Christian
Protestant work ethic.
Yeah. Where's the family? Oh, there it goes, right there. Nuclear
Husband,
family. Wait a second.
Breadwinner and head of household.
I'm white.
Yeah. Wife is a homemaker and subordinate to the husband. Children should have know about having their own rooms. I don't
Have
believe
own
in that.
rooms?
I'm not white. I put them all in the same room.
But notice
Bunk beds around the walls.
why does imperialism all of a sudden goes to
Empiricism.
Empiricism.
Yeah.
Why does that become white? Why does showing up to work on time become?
Because it assumes there's a God. It assumes
How is that
there's
white?
a creator God. Well, I know.
An objective God.
No, but that's the point, though, is God created the world in such a way that it's orderly and you can study it. You can learn from history. They say this, actually, you keep going down, it says white culture focuses on history.
Yeah.
Which is
Western civilization,
to the
particularly.
cause and effect relationships.
Yeah.
Things that happen a certain way are likely to happen a certain way again. Okay, all of that though is fundamentally grounded in God. That there is a God and He created the world and it's orderly. The only alternative is evolution and Darwinism. Everything is random mutation.
That's right.
Okay, that's all you have, and that's why do we object to the way things are being done? Because they want science to be a priestly caste.
That's right.
That tells
an institution
that delivers fiats from on high. It's like a new Mount Sinai.
Listen to us,
CDC. And you just have to submit and obey. But the thing is it's irrational.
Yeah.
God actually respects our minds.
Right.
We do believe Him. We do trust Him. But He gives us signs to believe. He gives us word. He gives us miracles. He gives us a scripture. He gives us the gospel.
Amen.
And He gives us the world around us. And He expects
and objective
us,
truth.
Yes, to use our minds, study it, and arrive at the truth. That's a Christian assumption.
Yeah, but wasn't that study supposed to be objectively given?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, you know what I mean? Like that. So how is it they don't fall?
Everything is fine. Everything's
Well,
fine.
our Godfather, Cuomo.
Now that's what this is.
This is what he's going to do.
And we have to get in those communities, and we have to knock on those doors, and we have to convince people, and put them in a car, and drive them, and get that vaccine in their arms.
Put them in a car.
I do everything for you.
I put them in a car and we'll get them a vaccine.
I do everything for you.
I couldn't imagine if Trump would have said something like that.
Oh, well, I know. Yeah, they've been.
If DeSantis would have said, I remember there's a
Put
clip.
them in a car.
Put them in a car
and get the vaccine.
Go drive.
Go to their house, knock on the door.
I'm
going to
send the Clintons over there.
Put them. Yeah,
this is absolutely
because
insane.
when you can't persuade with facts, you have to coerce.
Yep. And just go to your house, pull you out of your house,
put you in a car, and pretty soon you're in China.
Too late,
and you disappeared.
Too late.
Yeah,
we're pretty close to being there.
Dr. J,
Bhattacharya coming up next.
Man,
if we can survive the break with the Godfather, I hope he doesn't come to your house and come get you during the break. Turn out the lights.
New Yorkers, get
hide
out
in the basement.
Get out.
Cancel culture is real. Cross Politic is on the front lines of this battle with the goal of creating a Christian television network and platform where we can't be canceled and where content creators will have the freedom to glorify God. Our goal is to create a space for like-minded businesses to thrive on this platform and to reach an audience that will not only buy your products and services, but also support your business when the heat of cancel culture comes your way. We want our platform to help you create an anti-fragile business as we bring together Christians from all over the world to tune in. With millions of downloads a year, access to DirecTV, Xfinity, and social media outlets, we are excited to partner with you. So, if you own a business and believe in this vision, then you need to call me. I'm Garrison Hardy, and I am the Business Development Rep at Cross Politic and the Fight Laugh Feast Network. We are looking for businesses, large or small, that not only have great products and services, but also understand that the cultural battle that is impacting the business climate here and now. I have a background in marketing, and I'd love to help you advertise your business on Cross Politic. Give me a call at 208-792-1290 or email me at garrison@fightlaughfeast.com.
So in 2016, we found out that our youngest son, Asher, had cancer. And I will just never forget crying in the lobby of the hospital on the phone with the Samaritan Ministries person on the other end who was, who ended the call saying, let's just pray about this.
When it does hit you and you really wonder what's going to happen, it worked.
It continues to be affordable, it works, and it pays the bills.
You know who's my favorite Presbyterian doctor?
Who's that?
Dr. J.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. I am so grateful that we have Dr. J. Bhattacharya back on the show.
Me too.
Yeah.
He's
famous now.
You know, it's one of those things like what happened with Steve Dace. Like 5 years ago, he gave me a cell phone number.
Which he didn't.
and then
Steve,
Dr. J gave me a cell phone number and was like, hey, we're buddies now.
Steve, I understand your pain, man.
It's kind of a one-way buddy.
Dr. J. Bhattacharya is professor of medicine at Stanford University. He's a research associate at the National Bureau of Economics Research, senior fellow at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and at the Stanford Freeman, I never remember how to say it, Spogli Institute. He holds
just say it.
Courtesy appointments as professor in economics and health research and policy. He directs the Stanford Center on the Demography of Health and Aging. Dr. Bhattacharya's research focuses on the economics of health care around the world, with a particular emphasis on the health and well-being of vulnerable populations. His peer-reviewed research has been published in economics, statistics, legal, medical, public health, and health policy journals. He holds an MD and a PhD in economics from Stanford University. Dr. J, thanks for coming back on Cross Politic.
Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
So everybody is running around lighting their hair on fire because of the Delta variant. Mm-hmm. Should we be scared? Is this more dangerous? Why the blow up?
Okay, so first a couple of facts about it. So it seems like it probably is a little bit more infectious, maybe a lot more infectious. It's hard to say. There's differing sets of reports on this, but it's more infectious. You think that's bad news, except the fact is two facts. One is it does not appear more deadly. Yeah. If anything, it appears probably less deadly. So if you get the Delta variant, it's less deadly to you than the old type of the virus. Second fact, and this is the most important fact, if you've had COVID and recovered, or if you had the vaccine, either of the vaccines or any of the vaccines in the United States, then you are still protected against severe outcomes, bad outcomes from this disease. The severe outcomes meaning like hospitalization and death.
Right.
It's not as trivial a number of people that have had this. So for instance, my estimate is somewhere on the order of 100 to 120 million people were infected with COVID and recovered in the United States in 2020 before the vaccine. 85%, I think somewhere on that order, of elderly people who face the highest risk from COVID have been vaccinated. Mm-hmm. That is an enormous success. That means that what was once a disease that had a 5% infection fatality rate in the over 70 population has been turned into something much, much less deadly. So even with the Delta variant.
Yeah.
So, and that's a great success. Now, what are the consequences of this? You can look practically, so look at Sweden. Sweden, they didn't have nearly the success in vaccinations we've had, yet they used all of their doses to protect the elderly. Mm-hmm. And they had an enormous wave of cases in the spring, huge increase in cases, almost as much as they had in the winter, but the deaths didn't follow. The hospitalizations didn't follow. Same thing happened in the UK, or it's happening in the UK. Big wave of cases going on now, dropped actually the last week or two. But the deaths and hospitalizations didn't follow. We've turned this disease that was a 5% infection fatality rate in the over 70 into something that's much, much, much less deadly. And in the younger population, the under 70, it's still we've vaccinated a large part of that fraction of that population as well. But even before the vaccine, the mortality rate was 0.05%, 99.95% survival.
Right. How do we know? The Delta variant? Do we have testing to be able to distinguish the Delta variant from the standard COVID, testing?
No, that's a good question. The thing is, the normal test that people use, the nasal swab test that we've all gotten used to.
Not me.
You'll never get used to actually. That can't distinguish the variants. But there are special studies that can sequence the entire viral genome and that can distinguish the variant from other variants. You don't do that routinely, but there's Sentinel, essentially like they do it for sample. And from that samples, when the fraction of the Delta variant in those samples grow large, they infer that the rest of the population is growing the rest of the population.
So they're using modeling to do this.
Well, no, it's better than modeling. So they're using whole genome sequencing of the virus, but not for everybody, for a sample of the population. Mm-hmm. So the Delta variant, it is true, the Delta variant is spreading. Okay. It's spread through UK. We know that, again, from the same thing. It would be too expensive and actually not worthwhile to sequence in the same way for the whole population. It wouldn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But it does make sense to do it for sample and then infer. The modeling is, here's where the modeling comes in, where it's really sort of strange that people rely on this still. The modeling is, well, what would happen if I were to implement a shutdown? Well, then they use these models that assume that the lockdowns would have a certain effect on the disease spread. But we have no idea if that's true. Same thing with masks. If the models assume that the masks are effective, and yet there's no randomized evidence that mask mandates are effective in the way assumed by the models.
No randomized control studies for masking.
Right.
But there had been, like in the last 20 years, there have been several randomized controlled studies regarding masking. Just not this year.
Yeah, not for COVID. So for the flu, there is I've read 12 some studies, a dozen some studies on the flu, randomized studies of mask efficacy on source control, meaning whether my mask protects you in healthcare settings, and all of them are negative.
Right.
Oh, good. Now see what you done did.
Now wait. Would there be any difference between the flu and the coronavirus when it comes to studying the efficacy of masks?
It could be. I mean, it's possible. In principle, I wouldn't think so.
But the coronavirus has been around for a long time. It's this strand that
COVID. I mean, the thing is like, if you want to find something in science, you can draw inferences from things that are related to it, like the flu, masking effect on the flu to COVID. And that's, I think, not unreasonable. But ideally, what you want is a randomized study.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We have now been on this thing for a year and a half. There's been one study randomized on mask efficacy for COVID, and it was negative. It found basically no statistically significant effect of mask mandates or mask wearing on protecting you. And there have been no randomized studies on source control, whether masks protect everybody else.
Right.
So I think at this point, the burden of proof has shifted to the people who are demanding that everywhere children 2 years old wear a mask. Show us the randomized evidence that it actually works for infection control.
Right. When we're talking about this testing, I wanted to ask you about the PCR test. There was a little blip on the news.
CDC alert.
CDC thing this last week where they were saying,
we're going to sunset the current PCR test.
We're going to do a different kind of PCR test. And a bunch of people said, because we want to, I think the statement actually says something about distinguishing between influenza and COVID. And and of course, statistically, a bunch of the flu disappeared sort of the last year or two. Is that have we been conflating influenza and COVID, or did we misunderstand, or the CDC miscommunicate?
That statement was really poorly done. The decision on the CDC, this one actually was the right decision. So the PCR test that we use for COVID will not turn positive for the flu. It will not.
Okay.
That's not a problem with it.
Okay.
What the CDC was saying is, when you do the PCR test for COVID, you should at the same time do the PCR test for the flu.
Okay.
So that we have both together, information about both together. So they're replacing the single test that says only check for COVID with a test to check for both flu and COVID at the same time. And I think actually that's a good idea. The flu did disappear last year, especially in the latter half of last year in much of the world. Mask, no mask, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's likely to come back. It's already come back, actually, to some extent.
Okay.
So I think tracking it is quite important from an epidemiological point of view. So I think that decision makes sense. It just got the press release itself by the CDC was really poorly worded and easily misinterpreted.
Well, we all know the flu disappeared because the masking work was so effective.
Well, Dr. J, you say that the CDC and poor words seem to go hand in hand a lot lately, especially when they're saying that people who have been vaccinated should be wearing masks. So how can we trust anything that they're saying?
I mean, there are a lot of good people who work at the CDC, a lot of scientists who care about the health of the public at large. What I've seen, though, is the CDC has made enormous mistakes. The biggest mistake it's made is that it's decided that the only threat to public health is COVID.
And it's just COVID alone.
Yeah, and a lot of its messaging has been focused essentially on creating. I think that story they tell themselves is we got to make sure the public understands the danger. but the effect is to sow panic and create all kinds of harm that maybe at least I hope they didn't want. I have to imagine that they didn't want.
Right.
Actually have caused. So I think that's the problem. I think when you've at the very root misdiagnosed the problem, a lot of what you say is going to sound like nonsense because you're coming at it from the wrong just sort of bottom, the wrong route.
So I want to go back to the PCR conversation. Over this last year, I'm not a very smart guy when it comes to this kind of stuff, but to me it seems like a lot of the information out there about the PCR test has been pretty clear, but I feel like no one's really cares about the truth in all this. So, for example, the PCR test, the inventor of the PCR test, didn't he say that it was never really meant for this kind of point-in-time testing? And then, secondly, two questions here, that the cycle threshold of the PCR test in my state, they've been doing cycle thresholds up to 36 in the laboratories here. One laboratory is 35, the other one was 36. And as I understand it, that cycle threshold, that kind of magnifying of the cycle threshold is going to be at least 80% ineffective in finding real live coronavirus viral particles. So the first one is, is this test really good for this kind of thing at point in time kind of testing? And is the cycle threshold, does it really matter in this conversation?
Yeah, so let me describe. So Kerry Mullins, who's the inventor of the PCR test, it's an absolutely brilliant piece of scientific reasoning. It won him the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
It essentially allows you to take a small amount of genetic material and amplify it. And the way it does that is by the power of exponentiation. So there's a technique used to double the amount of genetic material once. So if you have one viral particle in you that does nothing because it's just one viral particle that's not infectious, you double it.
Right.
And then that's 2 now you have. Then you double it again. Now you have 4. You keep doubling. You have 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on until eventually you have enough that you can detect it. Because one viral particle you can't detect, but millions of viral particles you can.
Right.
Now the PCR test doesn't replicate the entire virus; it replicates a part of the virus. In fact, the way the PCR test, the standard ones, it replicates 3 little parts of the virus. And so what it does is, if it finds that the COVID virus sequence for that little part in any of those 3 parts, it says it's positive.
Okay.
Now, that is a useful thing to know, like how much of these viral fragments from people knows. But it's not the same thing as if I have a viral fragment in my nose, that doesn't mean I necessarily pose a risk to you.
Right.
It could just be a viral fragment. In fact, after you've cleared the disease, often those viral fragments hang around.
Yeah.
And so, now the cycle times are important. What are cycle times? Remember we talked about doubling?
Yeah.
A cycle time is how many times you have to double before the test turns positive.
Okay.
So if you have like thousands and thousands or millions of viral particles already in you, you only need to do a few doublings before you get enough that you can detect it.
Right.
If you have 1, then you have to do a lot of doublings. So the doubling times, it turns out, correlates very strongly with how infectious are you. If you need a lot of doubling, that means originally you have very little genetic material in you,
right,
then you're not actually a danger to anybody.
Right.
If you need a few doublings, then you might be. And it turns out that is really important if you want to understand what the PCR test means. The PCR test is good for certain things, interpreted properly. But to use it to track how dangerous the virus is in the population at large without this kind of caveat is, I think, irresponsible. It creates fear when instead we should be creating understanding.
So could we be looking at, with the PCR testing, we really could be looking at false numbers? And I'm not saying nefariously, but we could be looking at false numbers because people are trying their best to stop something they think is dangerous.
Yeah, I mean that's the rationale that I've heard from the public health officials that, well, yeah, we recognize that a lot of these cases are not actually dangerous to the population at large because they're not infectious, but we want to make sure that we capture every case so we can use it to isolate people, quarantine them, and so on. The problem is like there's harms to that.
Yeah.
You create panic in the population at large. You unnecessarily ask people to self-quarantine when it doesn't do any good for the public health. You close down schools, businesses.
Right.
You send people to jail for singing hymns in public. I mean, it is
bars.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that also inflate the death total too? If these PCR tests are over, wouldn't it overinflate the death total numbers?
So the death numbers are not necessarily. It depends on how you assign the cause of death. That's a whole nother
with or from all that stuff.
Dr. J, I got to tell you, that's probably the clearest I've ever heard that explained when it comes to the PCR testing. Thank you for that.
Yeah, this has been a master class with Dr. J on cross politics.
Join the club.
So with that, I feel like now I can trust you to even ask you more questions. Right now,
you're going to ask him about the vaccine.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask him about.
That's what I want. I want a master class on the vaccine.
Yeah, I really want to understand and know your perspective on the vaccine. What do you think about it? Should we trust it?
Is it snake oil?
I think it's a good vaccine. It's not a perfect vaccine, but it's a good vaccine. And to me, in medicine, what I've was trained to think about and learn, and what my philosophy of it is: every medicine you apply, any vaccine you apply, there's going to be some harms and some benefits. And you always have to think for different people, what are those harms and what are those benefits? There's no medicine that doesn't have some potential harm.
Okay.
Every single one of them does. It's always, will the benefits, are they worth the potential harms?
Okay.
Now, for me, if you think about the data on COVID, the harms to someone who is older or in a vulnerable situation, like, has diabetes or something, and getting COVID poses a very serious danger. 5% mortality rate is a very high mortality rate for the over 70. And so the vaccine, if you can tolerate a small level of side effects if you're avoiding that harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the older population, I think it's a no-brainer. The vaccine is safe enough that it overwhelmingly would benefit someone who's in that vulnerable category. So that's why I've been very strongly in favor of the vaccine for the vulnerable.
And you define that as like 70 or older or 60 or older? What do you mean the older population?
60, 50. I would even include someone who's like 30 or 40 and that's so scared of the disease that they can't live their life.
Okay.
Right? Because the psychological harms are real.
Yeah.
So I think that's it should always be a personal decision between you and your physician, and to make that decision. Are the harms worth the benefit? Now let me talk about what the evidence is for the harms.
Right.
It looks like the evidence and I've worked with the FDA for almost a decade now on vaccine safety. So the systems, there's multiple systems. There's one system called VAERS. That's the one that's gotten all this attention.
Yes.
And because it's publicly available, essentially what happens is you take the vaccine and you you get a headache. Well, you can sign on to VAERS and say, I got a headache after I took the vaccine. Or maybe somebody dies after that's happened, right? People die. But people would die. The problem is that people get headaches all the time without the vaccine. People die all the time without the vaccine.
With or from is a fair debate.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So you can't. VAERS, what it does is sends up a signal that says, "Well, look, people are getting clots, blood clots at high levels.
Right.
People are getting myocarditis after the vaccine. You throw up a flag.
Right.
Then what you do is there are other systems that try to compare against what the expected rate of clots are in that population, what the expected rate of myocarditis there are in the population.
For the age, weight, and kind of,
exactly.
those
a much more detailed study is possible with VAERS alone because there's no control group.
Right.
Got it.
That is that's the most reliable information you can get. And that's what the FDA does. I mean, they're actually quite good at that.
Mm-hmm.
The vaccine's only been around for 7-8 months, right? In the population at large. So we don't know about all of the effects. That's not possible. But now hundreds of millions of people have had the vaccine. What we've learned is, for sure, that if you are young, especially if you're a young male, the mRNA vaccines produce high rates of myocarditis. I'd say somewhere in the rate of 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 10,000. If you are if a young female with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you had this higher rate of blood clots in the brain.
Okay.
Right? So for young people, we've identified that the vaccine, and now it's not a high rate. It's still very rare, maybe 1 in I don't know, 50,000 for the blood clots, 1 in 5,000 for myocarditis. But there are serious side effects, and of course there's less serious side effects like the fever, the pain on the site of injection, the allergic reaction, medium alert, so all those are expected. It's these like serious side effects that are less expected, and then now we've just there's one other, which is Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a very serious neurologic condition that happens extremely rarely with the vaccines in older populations, but on the order of 1 in a million or 1 in 2 million. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's put this all together. I think for young people, there's really very little benefit. Mm-hmm. Young, let's say teenagers, and there's some risk of harm. Why very little benefit? Because COVID is not all that serious in young people.
Right. Yeah.
So the cost benefit is doesn't tilt in favor of the vaccine for young people. Now, there are serious people who disagree. They say, look, COVID is a little more harmful in young than you think, and the vaccine is not all that harmful, which is true. The second part's not that's true. And so, but again, this is a conversation you have between your doctor and you and your parent and the child, right? Mm-hmm. About that, looking at the data seriously. Mm-hmm. For older people, the vaccine to me is defanging the disease. We've turned the disease into something that is much less deadly. That plus the natural immunity that's built up in the population. So it's a complicated message, which unfortunately has been. It's really easy to like lose track of all of this and try to say, well, vaccine works, vaccines don't work. When in fact, the key question isn't whether they work or don't work, although that's part of it. The key question is it wise given the situation you find yourself in?
So a couple things there.
Hold on, I gotta say this. This is so important. This is so important. It seems like your economic side is balancing out your physician side. You know what I mean? And I love this blend of the two because you're actually weighing the differences between the two and saying, hey, here's the pluses here, here's what ends up happening if you go this way, and there's some benefits and negative benefits to it, but you're winning on this side versus like yes and no.
Right.
And so it really comes back to how about you make the decision that best suits you for your situation. Okay, Gabe, go ahead.
Now, as I understand it,
which could be very scary.
Yeah. No, for real. They changed the definition of what constitutes a vaccine back in October to be able to allow for this new mRNA vaccine. Is that true?
I mean, this is a new technology. It's used under an emergency use authorization.
Doesn't that bother you?
No. Because I'll tell you why. Because this is it is a serious disease for the older population. The EUA designation was there in place in order for situations like this. Mm-hmm. What bothers me is forcing people to take the vaccine when it is an emergency use situation.
Yeah, right.
Right. I think it is right that the FDA permit people to use to get the vaccine. Mm-hmm. That's what the EUA did. Mm-hmm. It permitted people to get the vaccine when otherwise it would have taken years to get approval for it. Okay. So that is a good thing. The bad thing is to then say to somebody who's vaccine hesitant, because like the CDC's lost all, people have lost all trust in the CDC, right. And then force them to say, oh, you must take the vaccine or else you lose your job, you lose your ability to send your kids to school, you lose your ability to fly anywhere. All of that is designed to build distrust in public health, and I think it's just deeply unethical. So I think the EUA is a good thing, Gabe. The problem, because it allows the vaccine to be used, and I said I think it's been a good thing. Yeah. Forcing people to use the vaccine when it is an emergency use thing is a mistake. And even after they declare it non-emergency use, they approve it finally. Yeah. It would still be unethical to force people to take it.
So you're not concerned, though, Dr. J, at all about sort of the technology itself, the sort of gene therapy thing, the mRNA stuff. As far as you're concerned on the scientific side of things, you don't have any, I've read some stuff about, long-term side effects or maybe making you more vulnerable to other strains.
Hands growing out of people's necks.
Okay. No. That's not what it is.
Wrong vaccine.
But making people more vulnerable to these kinds of viruses, that are like variants or, anything like that.
So let me describe the mRNA technology, so we can talk about the dangers of it from that perspective, right? So, what is this technology? So the way that our bodies work, like mechanically, is that we have DNA that's in our nucleuses of our cells.
Right.
The DNA codes for proteins. the way the proteins get made is the DNA. It's like a tightly guarded thing. You can't like let it out. So what they do is like what our cells do is that we copy the part of the DNA that codes for the protein, turn it into RNA, messenger RNA. Right. It comes out outside of the nucleus. Then there's a whole mechanism to turn the mRNA into a protein, based on the sort of plan in the DNA. Right. Now that's just true for every cell in your nearly every cell in your body is like that, right? So you have this like you have the nucleus, DNA, mRNA, protein. That's the central dogma of biology. What this vaccine does is it sort of hijacks the mechanism. I mean, very cleverly, and actually I think it's actually a good technology in that sense. Whether it works or not is a different question, right? So here I think there's evidence that it does. Okay. You take a snippet of the virus that codes for a part of the virus, in this case, the spike protein of the virus. Okay. You create an mRNA version of that and inject it into our cells that are around here. Some might go out and that might cause side effects, but mostly it's around here where you get the injection. And then the cells that it gets into then starts producing the spike protein. The your immune system reacts to the spike protein, produces antibodies, produces T cells, learns to react to the spike protein. So that when you are challenged with COVID virus, you recognize it and inactivate it. Or you reduce, that's why it reduces severe illness, because you've trained your immune system through the creation of spike protein created by the mRNA. Now, what are the problems with this? One is the spike protein doesn't always just stay at the site. Right. So like, why does it cause myocarditis? Probably because the spike protein migrates over there, causes inflammation in the wrong place. Okay. So the question isn't the mRNA technology itself. The question is all of the serious side effects that I know about are linked, I think, to the immune reaction to the spike protein, or the inflammation caused by spike protein in wrong places. But we've seen from the data is rare, except in certain populations. Okay. Right now, I actually personally am quite excited by the mRNA technology because, for instance, people are now talking about using it to get a vaccine for malaria, a disease that kills tens of millions of poor people around the world. If we actually had an effective vaccine for malaria, it would transform the world. Mm-hmm. It would make the lives of so many, many poor people everywhere much, much better. Right? It is actually a good technology. So I think the fact that it's being forced down people in a way that creates distrust, I think, is really harmful for public health for the poor.
Yeah, right.
Well,
and Dr. J, does have they done? Because this is really important.
Wow.
The questions I have to ask.
Can a brother get a question
in a minute? Have they done studies to see that to kind of verify that the T cells are being created from this vaccine?
Yeah, so the T cells do respond. There is a body of literature that says that. My reading of this literature is that it's not as complete a response as natural immunity. So if you've had COVID and recovered, you're likely to have better immunity than if you've had the vaccine. But the vaccine immunity is good enough to protect you against severe disease. Practically, that's what matters, and it does. It is. It's good enough to protect you against severe disease. There's lots of good news that come out of this. Whether the protection lasts for a long time. Well, we've only had the vaccine for 7-8 months. I don't know the answer to that question. No one really does. It seems like it lasts. It's likely to be somewhat long lasting. The disease, the immunity you get from natural infection, we now know lasts quite a long time. And it's not the antibodies. The antibodies fade. But the T cells and other cellular mechanisms of protection are actually quite effective and protect you against severe illness for a long time.
Go ahead, Knox.
So, Doc,
is there a brother in the room?
Go ahead, Knox.
Is there a brother in the room?
I know we got to let you go. I know you got to run. There might be two questions here. One of them is one of the big talk in the beginning of this last year, especially around March, maybe April, around May, was talking about reaching herd immunity, and reaching herd immunity would kind of put an end to some of this. And have we reached herd immunity yet at all? Because nobody's talking about that anymore.
Yeah. So I think the problem is, like, what does herd immunity really mean? Like, I think herd immunity became a synonym for the disease is gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is not what herd immunity means.
Right.
Right. Herd immunity means that that a sufficient fraction of the population is is immune either by natural infection or by vaccination, so that if they get exposed, you're not going to cause a serious illness. It's not that the cases go away.
Right.
It's that that one person infected doesn't pose a danger to very many other people in the population. Right. So in that sense, herd immunity we've reached. In the sense
but you heard it here.
We've reached it.
We have reached it.
Put your mask on and shut up.
Look. There are other coronaviruses we worry about that are herd immunity that comes in the winter and goes. The flu. I mean, there are all kinds. Not so much the flu, because the strain spreads. But even there, you have a lot of protection in the population. But herd immunity is a absolutely a well-known phenomenon that protects against many Zika, for instance. I think people think is herd immunity protects us against Zika. It's a well-known phenomenon that is like, it's just a biological fact. It's just poorly understood. I think shockingly, but I think by many epidemiologists, but also by the public at large.
Yep.
It's not a magic thing that stops the virus and makes it go away altogether.
Right.
Yeah.
I got one more question.
No. I get the last question.
You go and then I'll go.
So, Doc, with that being the case, why is it that everyone is only talking about the vaccine? I hear that we have 47% of people in America who have been vaccinated. I mean, it could be that no one has calculated how many people have actually had the coronavirus and survived it. I mean, with that being the case, why are we pushing vaccines in such a way that
even those who've had it, or pushing mandates? It seems like something that shouldn't be political is becoming very, very political, to the point that it makes everybody nervous, and it honestly has me on edge about what the future looks like if the government continues to push a certain type of narrative of controlling my life and health.
I mean, what's happened, I think, there's a deep psychological problem here. It's actually even a spiritual problem, I think.
Yeah.
Right. We have basically turned our neighbor into a bag of germs. We think of them as threats to us, as opposed to neighbors and people to love.
Wow.
This division, this like desire to scapegoat is like it's. I think that we've seen this all through history. I think we're seeing a version of that now. People are so scared about their health with regard to the coronavirus that they want to blame somebody. And back in a day, a few months ago, it was anyone who didn't wear a mask.
Right. And
now it's anyone who didn't get a vaccine. The reality is that your neighbor does not pose a very sharp threat to you. If you're older, you can get vaccinated. If you're younger, you're protected by either by previous infection, the vaccine, or by the fact that you're young and are not particularly vulnerable to the bad outcomes from COVID.
Right.
So we shouldn't. I mean, I really think it's a spiritual problem. I think we have trained each other over the course of the last year and a half, to look at each other as if we were just bags of germs, vectors of disease, as opposed to friends, neighbors, loved ones.
You preaching, Doc. You preaching, Doc.
Last question.
You better be happy I like you.
Yeah. The origins of the virus has been really heated up this last couple of months, especially between Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci. Who
you got? 500 on who? 500 on Fauci or 500 on Rand? I'm just wondering.
I guess two questions here within that last question. Do you believe the origins have come out of the Wuhan lab? And secondly, do you believe that it's possible that Fauci and some of his funding might have funded the creation of this virus?
So to the first question, the answer is I don't know. It's not, and the way to know would be for China to cooperate in a real probe. And now, the biological evidence I've seen leans toward this being some kind of lab leak.
Okay.
Not a virus that was evolved in nature that spread to humans naturally and then found in the lab. But we don't know that for a fact.
Right.
The molecular biologists that I'm friends with think that that's more likely than not, but we don't know for certain.
Okay.
Dr. Fauci certainly funded gain of function research. What is gain of function research? Gain of function research. So go back to like I don't remember, 2000, let's just say 2001, 2002, 2003, 2000, there's concern about avian flu.
Yeah.
Right. And avian flu is like bird flu. The question is, can it evolve and then start to spread among humans? And so the scientific community, biologists decided that they could answer that question. How likely is it that this virus could spread to humans? The way they did this is by changing parts of the virus to try to make it infect human cells in vitro in a petri dish. That's what gain of function is. You take a virus existing in nature, alter it, and then see if you can give it new functionality. In this case, the ability to infect human cells in vitro. That actually happened. The NIH, the American NIH, Chinese government, all the UK government funded that research, including Dr. Fauci's NIH, NIAID. In cooperation with the Chinese, including the lab in Wuhan, where the virus originated. That is certainly the case. In 2014, there was a pause put on this because some scientists started to be concerned that this was dangerous research. You're creating viruses. There could be a lab leak.
Right.
There was a pause, and then there was put in place a process eventually in 2017 where Dr. Fauci had to sign off on every single project proposed by researchers that the NIH funds. And he signed off on a score of them, actually, including in 2014 and 2017. He still signed off on a bunch of them, including ones where there was funding to this EcoHealth Alliance group that cooperated with the lab, that funded the lab in Wuhan to do gain-of-function research. That is absolutely true. And I think in that testimony with Rand Paul, Dr. Fauci was very, very evasive. The defense he gave was that the NIH signed off on this research because it wasn't gain of function by some technicality. It's research, as Dr. Paul said, that changed the functionality of the virus to see if it could infect human cells. It may meet the technicality that Dr. Fauci says. I don't claim to. I mean, I don't think he's intentionally lied on that. But what is true is that he signed off on an exceptionally dangerous research project. And he doesn't want to take responsibility for that. Wow. I think that's really, so the question is not so much of lying one way or the other by Fauci. The question is one of responsibility for signing off on a project that was, it's not directly, it's not the virus, it's not the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself that they were looking at. That's true. That's Dr. Fauci's like defense. Right. But that kind of research done by Wuhan lab and the United States is exceptionally dangerous. And many people think that it's more likely than not, in fact, that kind of research may have led to the lab leak and also to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. That last part's not proven. That's still speculative.
Wow.
Dr. J, how can people keep track with what you're doing and follow you? Do you have a blog, website that people can go to? Because I'm going to tell you, I just want to listen to you talk about everything. What does Dr. J say on the issue?
I appreciate that. So I've been working with there's a project called Collateral Global. You can go to collateralglobal.org. And I'm the editor-in-chief of this. Our goal is to document all of the harms of the lockdown. There's now enormous amounts of scientific evidence coming out about harms to the health of people who skip cancer treatment, people who skip going to the doctor for diabetes, huge numbers of people worldwide children who skip real needed vaccinations. People who tens of millions of people who've starved worldwide as a consequence of the economic damage from the lockdowns. And we're in the process of documenting those. You can see on collateralglobal.org a lot of the evidence we put together. And more than that, we want to make it accessible to the public. It's not just egg-headed studies, but things that people can read and see, and have people tell their stories. The lockdowns are, I think, a pivotal event in the lives of basically everyone on Earth. And we want to be able to we want people to remember that and hear those stories for forever. And that's what collateralglobal.org is.
Collateralglobal.org. Yep. I'm there.
I'm going there right now.
Dr. J, you just closed out the show with us. Thank you so much for being on Cross Politics.
Yeah,
appreciate that, man.
Appreciate you.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics. Dr. J, he talked me off the cliff, man. I appreciate him.
That's good.
I still think we're going to be watching people with hands out of their necks here.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.